Hello, my name is Nina Reeves from Stuttering Therapy Resources. Together with my co-author, Dr. Scott Yaris, we provide content that aligns with our mission to help our speech-language pathology colleagues help those who stutter and their families. We want to make sure that you follow us on social media so you won't miss all of our resources and information for speech-language pathologists and families of those who stutter. In this video, Scott will be addressing a much requested, frequently asked question topic of what do we do when the people that we're working with don't seem bothered by their stuttering? He has a lot to say on the subject, so sit back and enjoy. And don't forget, hit subscribe so you'll never miss one of our content posts.
Hi, everyone. My name is Scott Yaris. I'm a professor of speech language pathology at Michigan State University and president of Stuttering Therapy Resources, where what we do is we develop resources for stuttering therapy. This is another in our series of videos addressing key topics in the field to help speech language pathologists help people who stutter. And this time we're going to tackle one of the questions that we see asked all the time, and that is, what do I do if it appears that the child is not bothered by his speech? What do I do if I'm teaching him strategies and he's not really practicing them? He's not really doing anything with them. He's not generalizing them. He's not using it out in the real world. What do I do in therapy when this happens? It's a fairly common occurrence for children of a certain age where, yes, they're coming to therapy, but they don't seem to be getting anything out of the therapy because they're not doing anything outside the therapy. And it can be a frustrating situation for the clinicians because we want our kids to do what we're teaching. It can be a frustrating situation for the parents who want the kids to be making progress, whatever that might mean. And frankly, it can be a frustrating process for the children because they don't necessarily want to be pulled out of class or miss opportunities to be with their friends to practice things that they're just not that into in the first place. So the question becomes, what do we do about this? How are we going to help kids through this period? Well, the first thing we want to do is look at the situation a little bit differently than I think we typically do. Most of the time when I see this question come up, somebody will say, the kid just doesn't seem to be motivated for therapy. How do I get him motivated for therapy? And the problem with framing this in terms of the child's motivation is that it conveys this inherent notion that the child is doing something wrong by not participating in the therapy fully. And that's not the message that I want to send. Instead, I want to try to look at this from the child's perspective and try to understand what the child wants from therapy. By the time we're talking about a school age child, so, first, second grade in the US, I know different countries have different educational systems and different names, but a child of age 6 or 7 or 8 or so, okay? Once we're talking about a child of that age, we know that the likelihood of continued stuttering in some fashion is very high. Doesn't mean they'll always stutter the way they do, doesn't mean it'll always be a problem for them, doesn't mean it'll always be the same severity, but it's fairly likely that the stuttering will still be there in some fashion, okay? What that means is, on the one hand, boy, we've got a lot of weighty emotional issues to deal with for the parents and the child. On the other hand, though, it means that we have time. We have time. There's nothing that we're going to miss with a 10-year-old that if we don't do this one thing, he'll stutter forever. We don't have to worry about that. That decision's already been made because the likelihood of continued stuttering is very high. The question is, how do they live with that stuttering? Do they live with that stuttering in that it's a problem for them, or are they able to live with that stuttering in a way that it's not a problem and not a disruption for them? So the first thing is to know that we have all the time that we need to reduce that panic that the parents are feeling, that the teachers are feeling. So often you'll hear people say, we got to get this taken care of before he goes into the next building, before he graduates, before he goes for a job interview, before he meets somebody that he wants to get to know well. We always have this urgency, but truly we don't. We don't, because we have time. And what we're waiting for with that time that we have is we're waiting for it to be the right time for the child or the young adult to take that very difficult step of facing their fears. What drives stuttering is not just the physical tension that we see when people stutter. It's not just the neurological differences that are inherent in people who stutter, but it's the fear that causes them to want to hide their stuttering, to want to withdraw, to try to struggle with their speech so that they can be as fluent as they can, even though they know that the more they struggle, the harder it is. It's the fear that drives this. And so participating in therapy, making progress in therapy, making changes in your speech involves facing fear, and that's very hard to do. If something is scary, it's natural to not want to face it. It's natural to try to avoid it. And so much of what we see in stuttering is simply the person trying to not stutter. I didn't make this up. It goes all the way back to Wendell Johnson, who said, in essence, stuttering is what a speaker does in his attempts to avoid stuttering, right? In other words, the speaker anticipates or senses that something is about to go wrong in their speech and does things to try to prevent that from happening, tensing, speeding up or slowing down or changing words or not talking at all. And all of those things that people do are actually part of the stutter. They make the stutter bigger. And it's the fear that drives that. So if we take a look at a child and we say, yeah, he's not really doing much in therapy, he doesn't seem to be motivated, I'm teaching him the techniques, but he's not using them. First, think about it from the child's position and remember that probably part of what is driving that is fear. He's afraid to face the stutter. He's afraid to let the stutter happen. He's afraid to acknowledge that this is going to be different and this is going to be difficult and it's going to take effort. That's one piece of the puzzle, but there's other pieces too. Because, frankly, not all people who stutter are necessarily afraid of their stuttering. It is possible for some people to just stutter. And what I mean by just stutter is, I mean, they stutter without all that tension and struggle or without all that fear and shame. When they talk, they stutter. Well, in that case, then we have to again take the child's perspective and say, if they're okay with their stuttering, then why on earth would they put in a lot of work to change it, right? If they don't feel the need to change it because they can say what they want to say and do what they want to do and be who they want to be, then why would they put in all that effort that goes with speech therapy? I don't know if you've ever thought about it this way, but what we ask our clients to do in therapy is hard work. I mean, have any of you ever tried to, for example, use easy starts or whatever technique, doesn't matter what technique. Have you ever tried to use easy starts? Sure you have. You do them in therapy, you model them, but it's hard. Have you ever tried to do it all day? Have you ever tried to do it all day, every day, for the rest of your life? It's a really tall order. What we're asking kids to do, it's really, really hard. And even if they want to do it, they may not be able to put in the extreme amount of effort that it would take. Now, let's be clear. We never ask children to use easy start or whatever technique all day, every day for the rest of their lives because it's simply not possible. We ask kids in therapy to learn a strategy, whatever handling strategy they're using, and to use it when they need to. And it's much, 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 much less than all day, every day. But at first, it feels like this. It feels like a mountain that is just insurmountable and it's too hard. And so they may have trouble getting started on that. Again, it's fear. It's not, in this case, fear of the stuttering, it's fear of the therapy, fear of what you have to do to face the stuttering. Change is not free. It costs effort in order to make changes in our lives. And unless we're in a place where we're able to put in that kind of effort, we won't be able to make the change. Okay. I'm going to use an example here. And as I use this example, I want to introduce to you, or I want to mention to you that I'm not talking about you, okay? Because, well, this is a recording and I can't see you, okay? I don't know you necessarily. And so I'm not talking about you. And if this is your issue, I apologize. That's not my intent. But what I want to think about is what we might have experienced, certainly if I've experienced in my own life, of being on a diet. Have any of you ever been on a diet? Many of you probably have, okay? And if you've ever been on a diet, you know that there are those times when we go on a diet only sort of. You ever done one of those where you say, you know what? I'm not going to eat any more cookies unless they're really good ones. Yeah. The Girl Scouts come along here in the U.S. I don't know if this is worldwide or not, but they've got those tasty cookies, and you don't want to let them down. So you say, I'll make an allowance. I'll cheat a little bit. Yeah. Well, why do we do that? Why do we go on diets only sort of? Why do we buy treadmills and elliptical machines, okay, and then we use them solely for hanging clothes on rather than exercising on them? Yeah. Well, it's because we don't like where we are, but we don't like what we have to do to fix it even more. Yeah. And for so long as the pain of change is greater than the pain of staying the same, then the change won't happen. Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about it. We'll plan for it. We'll buy equipment for it. We'll think about it. But we won't actually make a change in our lives until the pain of staying the same is great and greater than the pain of change. Otherwise, why would we make the change? Let's apply this to our kids who stutter then. Sure, many kids don't like their stuttering, of course. Understandable. But they hate therapy even more. Now, I don't mean the sessions. They love the sessions with you, okay? Because they like your stickers. And here in the US, if you're in the schools, they appreciate that 1-on-5 attention that you can give them. Okay, they really like the sessions. But the real work of therapy, learning to face your fear, practicing a strategy, being in that uncomfortable place. What kid in his right mind would rather practice his speech stuff than go out and ride his bike on a nice day? Yeah, the pain of change is great. And if that's the equation that we have to offer them, oh, sure, you stutter. And yeah, maybe you don't love it. Maybe you're struggling with it, but let's try this that's much harder. It's a very difficult equation for people to say, yes, I'll do that. I'll do that. So for me, I may not like the physical shape that I'm in or that I am, yeah, but I don't like exercise even more. And so for as long as that pain of change is greater than the pain of staying the same, I won't do it. I'll be very unhappy, perhaps, until that equation changes. And maybe you've had this happen in your life. Maybe you've awakened one day and said, that's it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to eat right. Because finally, that pain of staying the same is too great. And that's when you do it. That's when you go on the diet and you work out and you do all those things until you get to about this point where the pain of change, the pain of staying the same are about the same. That's why those last 5 pounds are always so hard to lose, because it's not so bad by then until it starts to get like this again. And if you're like me, I spent a lot of time doing this. Okay. That's our kids who stutter. Even if they don't like their stuttering, if the therapy is harder, then they won't do it. They won't do it. It's not that they're not motivated, it's that the equation is not in their favor. So, what do we do about this? Well, there's one thing that we do and one thing that we don't do, in my opinion, in Nina's opinion. And that is, we don't try to make the child miserable just so that we can work on stuff in therapy. I got to tell you, I've seen people say this. Well, why don't you point out to him just how bad his stuttering is? Why don't you point out to him that nobody likes his stuttering? And then he'll feel bad, so he'll work on it. Absolutely not. Please, never. We should not be in the business of creating a problem just so that we can work on a problem. Truly, if the child is okay with himself, if the child is not experiencing much pain of staying the same, we should celebrate that, not try to ruin that. Here's a child who has already achieved the goals of therapy. He's fine. He's feeling good about himself. He's communicating freely. Why on earth would he be doing all this other stuff in therapy when he's okay? I don't diet when I'm at my target weight. I only do it when I'm not. And that's true about so many other things in life. So if the child is okay, rather than being upset about it, we should celebrate it. This is often a difficult message for the parents to hear, though. Okay. This is often where the parents say, but I wanted to nip it in the bud, or to get this taken care of before he goes off into school or whatever. And this is where we say, don't worry. Don't worry. We've got time. We got all the time in the world, because it might happen tomorrow that he'll come home and he'll be feeling bad. And that's when he'll be ready for therapy. I don't want it to happen tomorrow. It might not happen for a year, 5 years, 10 years, maybe never. Maybe the child is able to go through his life stuttering and being okay with it, in which case he doesn't need us. He's already fine. But again, it's a hard sell. So what I focus on for my own therapy planning and for helping the parents is I focus on, is there adverse impact as a result of the stuttering on this child's life? If there's adverse impact, then that's the pain of staying the same. And we address that. If there's no adverse impact, it's not our turn. It's not our time. We wait until there is. There's obviously so much more that I could say about this topic. But the first thing, most important thing I'd say is let's turn it around and not view it in terms of motivation. Let's not view it in terms of the kid's just not into it. There's something wrong with the kid. Let's see if either he's too scared to do it, in which case we have to bring down the pain of change, or he's not experiencing enough of a problem to make it necessary. And in either of those cases, we adapt our therapy to the child's needs and we ask in a very serious way, is there sufficient impact now to warrant the therapy? Helping the parents understand that, again, that's going to be a tough sell. I'm going to share with you on the screen right now one of our blog posts from Stuttering Therapy Resources. This is called, I Want to Dismiss Him, but the Parents Are Worried. And this is how you answer the concern when the parents say, yeah, but I want him in therapy now. Maybe you could teach him something today that he'll use later on. And if only that were true, if only it worked that way. But kids aren't that great at planning ahead like that to say, oh, yes, I'm going to learn a technique now that I may not use for 10 years, but I'm going to put a lot of effort into it right now. That's just not how we work as human beings. It's not just kids. I mean, how many people do you know truly who eat right and exercise at age 12 to prevent a heart attack at age 70? They're just not thinking about that. They're thinking about what's real now, what matters now. And so that's the key. If the child is experiencing adverse impact, we help them diminish that adverse impact. And if they're not experiencing adverse impact, then they don't need us yet. It could change tomorrow. We'll be there for them tomorrow. But in the meanwhile, let's let them live their lives as the kid is okay, because that's what we all want. Thanks for listening to this little clip talking about what do we do when the child doesn't seem motivated or he's not bothered by his speech or he's not participating in therapy. We can help even in those situations. You can find a lot more about this kind of thing on our website. It's www.stutteringtherapyresources.com. And of course, on all the social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of them, Stuttering Therapy Resources. You'll find us. Thanks.